In this video, we're going to take a look at how to program a Minitor 5 pager. So after you've hooked up the pager to the computer and read the pager, you'll want to go to View, User Data. It'll pull up this screen. The only thing on this menu that you can change is down here at the bottom where it says User. You have several different options. You can choose Motorola, GE, Plectron. You should go ahead and choose User. Even if you're using one of those other systems, User is going to work best for you. There's nothing else on this screen that you can change, so we're going to go ahead and click on the Channel 1. This tab at the top, Channel 1, is where you're going to enter your frequency. In this case, the frequency is 155.6325. This is a VHF Minitor 5. It shows the band split over here, 151 to 158.9975. Once you've entered your frequency, you can enter your tones. You have several different coding options here. It's best to leave this to none. If you choose one of the other options, you'll get A, B, A, C, or some combination like that. If you choose none, it shows you all the available tone settings. In this example, we have the first tone of 599 and the second tone of 669. The second set of tones is 700 and 890. This tone pair will alert, and when it alerts, it's going to alert with this type of alert. Standard means it's just going to beep. Continuous is one long continuous beep. And then there's various music settings. These aren't really musical. They just beep in different ways. So you can set up different beeps for each tone set, and that's what we recommend you do. That way you can tell who or which tone set paged you. So once you entered your tones and you set your alert type, you can go down to the long tone down here. These are called group call. It's a single long tone. It's typically 5 to 7 seconds long. And this is how it alerts when you get this page. Oftentimes you want to leave this to continuous. That's the traditional way that a long tone will alert. You'll notice if you type in a tone here, let's say your tone is 650. When you type in the tone, it may round the tone off. In this case, it rounded off to 649. Don't worry about that. That's just the way the software is set up. It'll work just fine when it rounds off the tone. So if you're entering a tone in here and you find it doesn't like the tone you entered, you can just leave it to whatever is suggested. In this case, we're just going to remove this tone that I've typed in. On the next tab at the top, where it says Model Options, you want to leave your stored voice to 60 seconds. A lot of people like to use dynamic, but the reason you don't want to use dynamic is because there is no upper limit to how long the stored voice can record. 60 seconds doesn't really allocate 60 seconds for each message. It's up to 60 seconds. So if you only get a message that's 20 seconds long, it'll just record 20 seconds. If you get a message that's 40 seconds long, it'll record 40 seconds. If you get a message that's 2 minutes long, it'll record for 60 seconds. So it'll only record for the first 60 seconds of the message. But a lot of people think that 60 seconds is set aside for each message. Now, this pager itself can only record 8 minutes, so that means you could only get 8 recordings if you had it for 60 seconds. But that's actually not true. You can get many more than 8 recordings even if you have this set for 60 seconds. So we recommend that you set an upper limit. You can choose one of these other settings, 120 seconds, but 60 seconds usually works pretty good for most people. This is the voice memo. Voice memo means it will speak to you when you change the channel. So it might say selective call channel 1 or something along those lines. Most people are going to want to have that off. You'll quickly learn knob A does a certain setting, knob B does a certain setting. So after you use it for a couple of weeks, you're not really going to need to know every time you change the knob from A to B that it's monitor mode. The fixed alert, you should just leave that off unless you want it to alert at full volume all the time. Fixed alert ignores the volume setting on the knob and alerts at the full volume all the time, regardless of where the knob setting's at. The alert duration, you'll want to leave that to standard. You could set it to fixed, but if you set it to fixed, you might miss a little bit of the dispatcher speaking at the end of the tones, because the pager will keep beeping after the tones have stopped and the dispatcher has started talking. So you could miss the front end of that dispatcher talking if you set it to fixed. If you set it to standard, it's going to stop beeping as soon as the dispatcher starts talking. So it's best to leave that to fixed. A call reminder, that just reminds you if you have a stored voice message that's in the pager and you haven't played it back yet, you probably want to leave that to no. There is a light on the front of the pager that will blink every once in a while to remind you that you have a voice message that you haven't read. If you set this as yes, the pager is going to beep at you every few minutes and just beep and then beep. And it could become annoying, especially if you get a lot of messages and a lot of calls every day. So you should leave that to off. Priority alert, you can leave that to off as well. Most people are not going to want that on. Privacy, that prevents the reset button from being pressed. You want to leave that to off. The reset function, revert N, now this is a typical way it comes from the factory, usually 3 seconds to 7 seconds of revert N. If you have a stored voice pager, you want to have this revert N. The revert N prevents the pager from accidentally dropping the stopping the stored voice recording after you get a page. Sometimes the carrier will drop the signal between the tones and the speaking of the dispatcher, and the pager will actually stop recording whenever the carrier drops. So you'll have the tones go off, you'll have a drop, and then you'll have someone speaking. Now you may not even be aware that there actually is a drop. It'll be so quick and momentary, it just goes from the tones to the person speaking. But it is very common to have that drop, and if you have a drop after the tones, the pager will actually stop recording right at the end of the tones, so you'll actually get no message, or you might just get the last end of the tone recorded as the carrier is dropped. So you want to leave this to revert N, and typically 4 to 7 seconds is good, so whatever you happen to have in here, or whatever comes up from Motorola with the default, that would be fine. Squelch level, best to leave that alone. This just loosens and tightens the squelch of the pager. It really doesn't do a whole lot. It just changes it very slightly. So if you're around equipment that puts out a lot of interference, you could tighten up the squelch a little bit. If you do that, it just will not unsquelch the pager until you get a higher level of signal coming in. Most people are not going to want to change that, and even if you do change it, it doesn't really stop the pager from picking up the noise. It just requires a little bit higher level before the pager will unsquelch. So at the top, the next tab is the function switches. So if we click on the function switches, you'll see this is SWA, that's switch A, switch B, C, and D. And this is what that switch will do. So switch A is currently set up for selective call. Selective call means it's going to be quiet until you get paged. The alert type selected here is vibrator, and over here it's push to listen. So the pager is going to be quiet until you get paged, then it's going to vibrate, but there'll be no audio afterwards because you have to push the button to listen to the page. The switch position B is set up for selective call again, same as A, but this time it's going to tone alert. So it's going to now beep after you get the page, and the audio will then come on so you can hear the broadcast after the page. You can choose different settings over here. You can choose tone, vibrate, or tone and vibrate. Tone means it's going to beep. Vibrate means it's going to vibrate. And tone and vibrate means it's going to do both at the same time. It's going to beep and vibrate. Another setting you can choose is monitor. You can monitor the traffic. It'll pick up all the traffic on the channel, everything that's broadcast you're going to hear. And then this is how it'll alert once you get paged. You're probably going to want to go with the tone and vibrate if you're in monitor mode. That way you won't confuse the traffic you're hearing with a page. If you're on narrowband, you want to uncheck these wideband boxes. If it's checked, that means it's wideband. You want to uncheck these and make it narrowband. Everybody should be using narrowband by now. And so you want to match your pager up with the system that you're using. So once you've done all the settings, you can just click on OK, and then you can program the pager by writing here on the drop-down menu.